Hello and welcome to the Sage 50 Cloud Accounts Fast Start session. This is Fast Start 1, Get Ready, designed to get you up and running when first using the system. The agenda for the session is on screen now. Firstly, we're looking at some essential settings, so some handy hints and tips to get you started. Then looking at customer setup, so creating your customer records in order to then look at recording sales against those, so raising batch invoices on those customer records. Moving on, we'll look at supplier setup, which is very similar to the customer setup process. So mostly we'll be looking at a quick and easy way of bringing existing data into your system via the import function. Moving on, we'll look at nominal codes and the nominal ledger and how those codes can help you gain insight into your company. And then looking at departments, so outside of the nominal ledger, how you can analyze the costs and profitability of different areas of your business. Followed lastly by data management, so creating access rights to protect your data by specifying who can log in and once logged in, which areas of the system they can view, and then backing up your data, so making sure that you've got a copy of your data stored safely in case you need it. As you can see, I've moved into my software now, and this training is designed on the assumption that you have been through the active setup wizard and created your company with things like the company details, the financial year start date, VAT details, and so on, and that you're ready to log into the system. And when you log into Sage 50 Cloud Accounts for the first time, you'll receive the Customize Your Company wizard. Now, we talk about the Customize Your Company wizard for two reasons. One, because it's a really useful wizard in that it gathers most of the settings for your company in one handy place. So you can see things that you've got your customer defaults, you've got things such as your suppliers and purchase information, banking settings, products, and so on. And it is great if you're not used to using Sage 50 Cloud Accounts to have this all in one place. The other reason I talk about it is that it's not particularly useful for getting you to grips where these individual settings are within the software. So for this training, I'm going to click Close and not use the Customize Your Company wizard. If at any time you've closed it and want to get it back, it's always available to you via Help and then Customize Your Company. I'm going to close this wizard now and talk about some other options available within the Help menu. The first of which is the Help Center. So within the software, you've got a link to our online resource that you can search for anything you need to know more about. So as an example, I'm going to search here for some opening balance information. It's looking for Sage 50 accounts. So I'll click search, and as you can see on screen, it's brought up a variety of different articles based on my search criteria. So that's the Help Center. And also within the Help menu, we've got our software update settings. And within here, our recommended settings for any updates, which is for your software to notify you when an update becomes available. What that means is that each time you open the program, it will check to see if it's the most up-to-date version, and if not, let you know what updates you should install to get up to date there. So that's our recommended setting, notify you when an update becomes available. Next to the help menu, we've got web links, which is a list of online resources such as the Sage homepage, our shop, and also a direct link through to the HMRC website should you need any clarification from that. And moving on again, we'll go to settings. Now I mentioned earlier that Customize Your Company contains most of the settings for your company. Things that it doesn't contain are things such as what your financial year is set to. And I bring this up because Sage 50 Cloud Accounts wants your financial year start date, not the end date. So before you process any transactions, it's worth coming into settings, financial year, and just making sure that this is correct. If it's incorrect and you haven't processed any transactions, simply change it and click OK there. Back within settings, we also have change program date, and that is the default system date. What that means is if you're processing on a Friday, but you're actually processing the transactions for the Wednesday before, by selecting that as your default program date, it means that when you raise transactions, that date will automatically show for you and you don't have to then select it each time. When you're ready to do so, you can just go back into settings, change program date, and set it to today's date. Back within the settings menu, we're now going to have a look at those customer defaults. Now the customer defaults are telling the system what to enter into customer records when you create them. So the default information you want new records to create with. So that includes things such as your standard tax code, your default nominal code, and also department, which we have a look at a little bit later on. What we've also got nearer the bottom is this terms agreed checkbox. Now without terms agreed, each time you open a customer record or raise a transaction to that customer, you'll get a warning saying that terms have not been agreed with that account. You can agree them on an individual basis if you wish, or you can select that new customer accounts will already have this box selected. So if you want to, put the tick in here, but do tread carefully because it will mark each new account as if they've had terms agreed. I'm going to click OK there. I'm going to move into customers and talk about creating your first customer record. So to do that, I'm going to click on New/Edit, and a blank customer record will appear. Now the very basic of information that I need in order to create a customer record is showing here with the asterisk against A/C, and that's the account reference. So that's the very least information I need in order to save a record. And when we talk about an account reference, what we recommend is that you future-proof yourself. As an example, I'm entering an account for Smith, but it's likely that I'm going to get more than one person called Smith that I deal with. So to future-proof myself, I call them Smith001, and that's Claire Smith. I can then save that record. When I get another Smith, they can be Smith002, because I've given myself that flexibility by adding those numbers on the end of the reference there. So I've now got John Smith as well. Once I've got those customer records created, I can go in and fill out some more information if I wish. So the bare minimum I needed was account reference. What I can do is I can enter their registered address. What I can also do is then add multiple other addresses. So here I've got addresses and contacts, and when I click on there, it's asking me to save that record, and I can add a new delivery address or contact address, so I can have different addresses for my customers. Also within the details screen, I've got things such as their contact information, their social media profiles, and their email addresses. So if I want to send things like invoices, letters, statements to this customer, I just need to make sure that they've got an email address in them and that I tick this box here. Within the defaults tab, you can see the information that's pulled through from my customer defaults. So it's created them with a default nominal code, default tax code, and default department. Now none of these are set in stone. If I want to change the default nominal code, I can do so. Same for my tax code and my department there. Within credit control, I can set up my trading terms so I can enter things such as my customer's credit limit and also the amount of days after the invoice date that I expect payment. So what I'll say is this is 30 days after the invoice date. And at the bottom, you can see that it's got that terms agreed tick. So it's pulled that through from my customer defaults as well. In the bank tab, as you may imagine, I can enter the customer's banking information. And the communications tab, which is covered in Fast Start 2, allows me to chase my debt. So I can use this tab to record new letters, new telephone calls, new meetings that I've had with my customers in order to facilitate being paid faster there. Lastly, we've got the memo tab, which allows you to add attachments into your records, either electronically or by stating a filing system reference, so it will keep a record of those within the record in Sage. I'm going to click cancel there, close that, and I've got my two accounts now. So what I'm ready to do is raise my first transaction. And I'm going to do so by using batch invoice at the top of the screen. We've got batch invoice, and just to keep you right, when you come in here, the writing will come up in black. If you've made a mistake and you've incorrectly clicked batch credit by mistake, you'll see the writing in there is in red. So it's just a handy way of keeping you right there. Back into batch invoice, and I'll give you a little bit of information about the columns contained within here. So we've got account reference and date. Now you'll see that's the default program date that I set in my settings, and it's calculated the due on date based on the information from the credit control tab in the customer's record. I can put any reference that I want in here, and if I wanted to, an extra reference. It's pulled through the default nominal code and department. Projects we're not going to cover in this training, so I'll skip over that. I can then put the details of what the invoice is. So I'll say this is red wine. I'll put the net as 500. And when I tab across based on the tax code, it automatically calculates the VAT for me. It may be, however, that I only know the gross amount, not the net. What I've got the option of doing, I'll just zero out this VAT here. I'll say this is a £750 gross invoice, put that in the net column, and at the top I can either click here for calculate net or press F9 on my keyboard. Both does exactly the same thing. It'll split out the net and VAT. So as you can see, it's automatically calculated the net VAT split of that invoice. If this customer has paid me some money up front, perhaps as a deposit, I can enter the amount paid, the date they paid that, and the bank account reference in there as well, should I wish to do so. And because this is a batch invoice entry screen, it means I can put more than one invoice on at once, dated differently if I wish. And there's some other handy functions within here. So if my references are incrementing as I go by one, I can say, well, copy the cell above +1. And you'll see it's put 1, 2, 3, 5 in there. What it might be is I want the same X reference. So in that instance, I can just say, well, copy the cell above, and it'll do that for me. I can change the nominal code, so I don't have to put things all to the same nominal code. And transactions can have different details, different amounts, and indeed can be for different customers. So I've raised two invoices there for Smith 001. I'm now going to raise one for Smith 002. So I'll put that on. And then I might think, well, actually, that second line's a mistake. So I've put this invoice in incorrectly. I can just choose to remove that row by clicking here or pressing F8 on my keyboard. If I then want to insert a row and enter the data correctly, I've got insert row here. Now I'm happy with those two rows, so I'm going to remove my new one, save that, close, and I can then see those balances reflected in my customer list. Moving on now, we'll have a look at suppliers, and this is a very small section only because creating suppliers is very similar to creating a customer. So I'll click on suppliers here. As you can see, I've got a blank list as I had with my customers, and I've got new at the top. When I click on that, a very similar screen appears. So it's asking me for the mandatory information, which is again just the account reference. And as with customers, we would recommend that you future-proof yourself with these. And I've got things again such as the registered address, contact information, social media information, and email. Supplier defaults that will automatically populate based on what I've entered in my settings. Credit control, so I can enter the credit limit I've had from my supplier. When my payments are due. And again, if I need to, I can always tick this terms agreed box if it's not coming through from my defaults. And I've got a very similar bank, communications, and memo tab there. So I'm going to save this supplier and close. Now you can see that I've created 3 records, so 2 customers, 1 supplier, and it's taken me a little bit of time to do that. It may be that when you start using Sage 50 Cloud Accounts, you already have a list of your customers and your suppliers in another electronic system, or perhaps in an Excel spreadsheet. And what Sage 50 Cloud Accounts will allow you to do is import those. So if you can get them into a CSV format or an Excel spreadsheet, those can be imported into the software. So I'll take you through how we do that now by importing a list of suppliers. I'm going to go to File, then down to Import, and it'll open up the Data Import Wizard. Sage 50 Cloud Accounts comes complete with a list of templates as to how the system expects the data to be laid out, which can be accessed using this link. What I'm going to do is open up my supplier record full template. And when that opens, there's one column highlighted with a blue heading, and that's showing what's mandatory. So again, even when importing, the only mandatory information is that account reference. Anything else in yellow, we would encourage you to have, but it's not essential. They're just nice to haves. So for a successful import, make sure you've got at least your account reference in there. I'll close that screen. And it does specify here to make sure that you take a backup before you do your import. Now, backup is covered later in this session. An import is not reversible, so do make sure that you're taking that backup before going through it. I'm going to click Next and click Supplier Records. Click Next. It'll ask me the format my data is in, so mine's in an Excel worksheet, which I browse to. And then I need to specify whether my first row contains headings and therefore shouldn't be imported. Now I know mine does. It's got things like account reference, name along the top. So telling the system that just means don't import that row. Click Next. And it'll then ask me which of my fields correlates to the fields in Sage. Now that's because I'm not using the standard template. If you were, it would automatically populate. But for me, I can say, well, account reference is in my A/C. Account name is in my name column, and so on. If I'm going to be doing this again, I might want to populate my map and then save it. If I've already done it before, I can reload one by clicking Load Map. And if I make a mistake, I can click Clear Map. I'm happy that account reference and name are going to import, so I click Next. It gives me a summary telling me I'm going to import supplier records from Book 1, Sheet 1, and that I do have a header row. I'm happy to proceed, so I click Import. That will run through and it tells me which records have been imported, and when I click Close, go back to my suppliers, I've now got a pre-populated list of suppliers there. Moving on, we're now going to have a look at the nominal ledger. So I've come into a set of data that's got a lot of transactions in it, purely because that will give us some more meaningful information to have a look at. The nominal ledger contains a list of all of the company's nominal codes, and as you raise transactions against those nominal codes, balances will accumulate that represent the different types of income, expenditure, assets, and liabilities for your business. There's 3 different types of nominal code, and the first type is an umbrella, so every code that sits within the nominal ledger is classed as a nominal code. Within that umbrella are the 2 other types. So the first are your bank accounts. So within my company, from 1200 down to 1240 are my bank accounts, and I can see those sitting on my nominal ledger, but they also have their own area in bank accounts, which is also the only place where I should create new bank accounts. So that's one other type of nominal code. The other are your control accounts, and they are held in settings, control accounts, and these are used by the system for automatic postings. As an example, raising a sales invoice will credit the sales nominal code and also automatically credit VAT on sales with the VAT amount. The system, to balance that out, will automatically post the debit to the debtor's control account. So that's the double entry taken care of by the system, and you don't need to worry about it. So that's the control accounts. Back within the nominal ledger, each of my nominal codes is assigned to either the balance sheet or the profit and loss, and that is recorded in the chart of accounts. Now it's possible to create additional chart of accounts, up to 65,000 of them. I've just got the one here, and if I was going to create a new chart of accounts, what I would recommend is done is to make a copy of the default and leave the default as it is, make any changes to this copy, and only when you're happy could you get rid of the default one there. What I can do is highlight and edit And I can see that my chart of accounts is broken down into two tabs, the profit and loss and the balance sheet. Back into profit and loss there, and I can see that the sales on my profit and loss is broken down into the ranges in this bottom section. Similarly, I've got my purchases, direct expenses, overheads, and taxation. And on my balance sheet, I've got my fixed assets, my current liabilities, long-term liabilities, and my capital and reserves. And each of the ranges in each of those sections is broken down to show the lowest nominal code within that range and then the highest. So again, we've got that for profit and loss and the balance sheet. Back within the profit and loss now, I can see I've got my product sales ranging from 4,000 to 4,099. What I may want to do is reduce that down and just say I want my product sales to be from 4,000 to 4,005, which I'm going to do now. I'm happy with everything else in my ranges and I click save. And this warning is something that you'll need to be aware of. It's showing me that I've got an incomplete chart of accounts. When I click OK, it just saves the changes I've made. My default layout of accounts is now showing as partial. So if at any time you see partial or you're editing that chart of accounts and see the message about it being incomplete, just do edit and run a check and the system will give you a report telling you any problems. So what it's going to tell me is that I've got nominal code 4009 not represented in chart. So I've reduced that range down by too much. I've now not got 4009 on either my profit and loss or my balance sheet, so the system doesn't know where to put it reporting wise. So I'm going to close this report, edit this range again, and say actually it's going to range up to 4009, save that, and it's no longer showing partial there. So that is how you can go into view, edit, and save the chart of accounts there. The view of your nominal ledger can also be changed. So at the minute it's showing in list view. I've also got analyzer in the top right. So if I click analyzer, what it does is it gives me totals based on the different sections on my profit and loss and balance sheet. So for sales, purchases, direct expenses, and so on. What I can also do is break those down by using the drill down, this little plus sign here. I can see the totals by the categories within those sections that I could see when I was in my chart of accounts. And again, I can drill down further and see that by individual nominal code. I've also got a graph option. So I can click on graph and see a graphical representation of all the money in my business and where that sits. And again, if you hover your mouse over the relevant areas, you'll get the totals for those areas. I'm back in the list view now, and I'm going to talk about something that should affect everyone when they start using Sage 50 accounts, and that's posting your opening balances. So the state of your business when you start using Sage 50 accounts, any opening balances on customers, suppliers, and nominals there. Sage 50 Cloud Accounts comes complete with a very useful wizard to post those opening balances for you, which we'll have a look at in a moment. If you wanted to, you can go into an individual customer record, open them up, and use this OB button against their balance to post an opening balance in there. And that same OB button is within supplier records and also within your nominal records. But as I say, there is a wizard that guides you through the whole process step by step, and that's available in Tools and Opening Balances. And the important thing to mention here is whether you're using the wizard or you're using the manual opening balances button within each record, there's no need to enter your opening balances before using the system for day-to-day transactions. Simply post your opening balances when you're ready. So the wizard will first of all ask for your default date. So that's just the date that you want to process your opening balances on. It's usually the last day of the previous financial period. You can then choose to enter your opening balances for your customers. So you select the customer. The date will automatically complete and it'll be given a reference of OBAL. You can choose an extra reference if you want. and then you can choose to either record an invoice or credit balance against that customer. Now I'm using standard VAT, so all it asks me for is a gross amount. If I was using VAT cash accounting, because of the way VAT is processed on receipts and payments rather than invoices and credits, when using VAT cash accounting, you'd have to put the net VAT split on. Under both VAT schemes, if you're wanting to age these invoices, what you should be doing is putting them on with the appropriate date rather than just a default opening balance date. This is just like a batch invoice screen in that I can record multiple transactions against multiple accounts. When you've completed your customer opening balances, you can click on Save and then repeat the process for your suppliers. Again, the screen looks very similar. You can check your customer and supplier opening balances by running reports, and then you'll need to reverse the nominal balances. Now, the reason that you need to do that is that when you enter your supplier and customer balances, they are going to appear on the nominal ledger under your debtors and creditors control accounts. When you enter your full trial balance, those same balances will be entered on, so they'll be duplicated. So to prevent that, you use the reverse option, which will automatically populate the figures for you based on the totals that you've entered against your customers and suppliers. You can then enter the full trial balance from your accountant, any uncleared bank transactions, check your opening balances, and then check your data and back it up. And more information can be found about the opening balances wizard in Ask Sage article 11232. That's 11232. So we've had a look now at the nominal ledger and the chart of accounts and how that will dictate where codes sit on either the balance sheet and the profit and loss for analysis, and then also how we can enter our opening balances on those nominal codes. What we're going to do now is move on to departments and having a look at another form of analysis. What departments allow you to do is to split out costs and profits into different areas of your business. In my example, I've got it set up as departments. Some of our customers use this to analyze the profitability of salespeople and have their salespeople set up as different departments. Others may have one business but multiple branches and therefore set departments up as different branches. There's a maximum of 1,000 departments running from 0 all the way down to 999, and you can't create new ones, but what you can do is highlight one that isn't in use and give it a new name. So I'm going to edit Department 8 and call this one Clerical. Click Save, and when I'm raising transactions, for example, a supplier invoice, I'll click Batch Invoice, choose my supplier, and for this supplier, I can see the department in their record is Department 2, so that's the default that pulls through, but I can change it. So it's currently looking at purchasing. I might be raising a transaction for marketing. And as I'm raising transactions against each of these departments, if I close out, go back to departments, you can see that you can run things like the profit and loss and balance sheet for these specific departments. So you can analyze the profitability of each area of the business. Now it's also possible to change how this is labeled. So in the navigation bar, it will remain as departments, but when you're raising your transactions, it doesn't have to say that. And you can change it by going to settings, configuration, and we've got custom fields. There's various different areas that you can customize within the software, such as the analysis within the customer record, emails, and analysis on quotations and sales orders, but we're going to concentrate here on the department. And what I want this to be called is business area. So I've put that in there. I'm going to apply that to my current company, close it, and this time if I go to suppliers, batch invoice, it no longer says department, it's asking me business area. Notice it's exactly the same in the navigation bar, so it only changes for the transaction. but it's just a nice way of you being able to see what that flag is specific to your company there. The last area on the agenda is data management, but it is quite a wide-ranging area. It covers access rights, so creating new user profiles to log into the company and process, restricting the access of those users, so it may be that you don't want them to access all areas of the program, so you can change their rights for that, and then backing up your data, so making sure that you've got a copy of the data stored securely should the worst happen and you need to get that data back. We'll start with access rights, and they can be found within settings and access rights. Even if you have a one user license, it's possible to create new user profiles. It's just that only one user will be able to log in at any time. You also need to enable it in settings, company preferences, and the parameters tab. I'm operating on a multi-user license, so I'm fine to just go straight ahead to settings and access rights and click on new. I'm going to create my new employee. She likes tea, so that's going to be her password. And you can see that I can either set her to full access or no access. That is not the limit of what you can do with our access rights. I'll leave her as full access for now, and I've got a list of ticks, so the different areas in the software with ticks against them. It may be that I don't want Jenny to have any access to my quotations. What that also does is it gives her partial access to sales orders as those two areas overlap. So anything that's showing partial will just get this square in it. I don't want her to have access to my VAT or my fixed assets. And what I can also do is drill down. So within, as an example, the suppliers area, I might say I don't want her to be able to age any of my supplier debt or have access to my price lists. When I'm happy with that, I can click OK, and Jenny will show in my user list as partial. Now that was taking somebody from full access and reducing down from there. It may be, if you've got someone who has very little access, that it's easier to create their record, give them no access, and then build it up. So for Chris, I'm going to say he's got no access, but then I'm going to give him access to my customers, my suppliers, my products, and I'll leave him with that partial access to the bank accounts. So rather than give him full access and then reduce down all the way down to what he's got here, it's easier to start with none and raise his access levels up. So again, I'm happy with that, and I'll click OK. I'm then going to click Close, and I'm going to go File and log off. So I'm currently logged on as the manager. If I log in as Chris, if we keep an eye on the navigation bar down the left-hand side, when I click OK, that's greatly reduced. It only gives me access to those areas that the manager logon said I could use. What I'll do is I'll go into customers. I'm going to raise a batch invoice, choose any customer. I'll just put the invoice amount in and click save. I don't mind about that financial year message. And then I'm going to log back in as the manager. And I'll have a look in the transactions list. And against each transaction, take this filter off. Against each transaction, there is a username. So for audit purposes, I can see that manager's been processing all of these transactions and Chris has processed this one. So that's another useful area when it comes to access rights and user profiles. And lastly, we're going to have a look at taking a backup. Now, a backup is important because it protects you in terms of any data loss. As an example, if there was an issue with your server or the machine that held your data was stolen, that data is then gone. If you've got a backup, you know you can just restore that backup in and you're back where you were. And it also allows you to make mistakes, to try routines out in the data, knowing that whatever the effect of the transactions, if it's not as you need, you can just restore back to your backup and try again. So to take a backup, we go File and then down to Backup. And you can choose to back up various different elements. So we would always say to be making sure that you're backing up your data files. If you edit our standard reports and layouts, you may want to back those up. If you are attaching anything into your records, if you're hosting images and so on, you can choose to select as many or as few of these elements as you want, but do always make sure you're backing up your data. The file name will be Sage Accounts, the company name, the date in reverse, and the time of the backup, and all of our backups are .001 files. As to where you should be backing up to, we would recommend somewhere that is secure and away from where the data is held. As an example, if it's on the server, back up to either a separate server or a removable device somewhere that you know you can keep that data safe. For this example, I'm just going to back up to my C drive in my backups folder. And I'm going to click OK, and it'll ask me if I want to check my data. Checking your data is a good way to make sure that there's no problems in there. So what it will look for is any corruption presented as errors, and also warnings and comments, which are saying there are things in your data that may not be correct. We recommend that you check them out there. So errors are the most severe, which means you've got data corruption and should stop processing altogether to fix them. Warnings and comments are things that you may need to check out. So it's found very little wrong with my data. I'm going to click close there, close again, and it runs through that backup. So now I know I've got a backup. I'm fine if I wanted to process transactions to see the effect of those if I wasn't sure, and then just restore back. And as I say, should the worst happen and something happens to my data, I've got a backup stored securely that I can restore back in. Should I wish to do so, I can go File, Restore, browse to that backup, restore it in, and I'm back where I was there. What you can also do is schedule the system to take a backup for you. So from day to day, as you're processing, it might be something that you think, I want to take the pressure away from me and let the system do it. To do that, go File, Schedule Backup. It will give you a summary if you've got multiple companies. It'll give you a summary for things such as who's logged into each company, when the last check data was done, when the last scheduled backup was done. And here we've got the settings. So you can see on screen now that mine is scheduled to back up and check data on each company once a day at 5:30. So at the end of each day, after I've done all my processing, it's going to do that backup for me. And as long as the machine that holds your data is turned on, it will do that scheduled backup for you. You can change the settings, as I say, and you can choose how often you want it to happen. So if it's more than once a day, you can specify that there. So again, it's just a quick and easy way of getting the system to do some of the work for you, and it takes that pressure off you remembering to take that backup. Just going to cancel that. Close that screen and talk about two other areas that allow you to try things out without affecting your own company data. And they are our practice data and our demonstration data. And both are accessible through File and Open. I'll talk about practice data first, so I'll go Open Practice Data, log into that, and it will ask me if I want to continue with my last practice or I want to start again. So I'm just going to choose to start again. Reset everything, as it says here, start from scratch. I'm going to OK that. And what this does is it gives me a completely blank set of data. So it's a dummy company with no customers, no suppliers. It's got a list of nominal codes but no balances on there. And it allows me to practice in here, safe in the knowledge that my live data is fine, so I can practice routines, I can set customers up and see how transactions affect them and the nominal and so on without affecting my live data. And then I've got demo data, which is similar to the practice data in that it allows me to practice, but this time in a company that's got customers, suppliers, products, balances on there. So when I view my nominal, I've got those nominal codes with balances so I can run management reports and see what they look like. I can have a look at my customers. I can maybe age some debt. I can run lots of different routines in this dummy company in practice for my live data, knowing that my live data is unaffected by anything. So that's file open, open practice data, and file open, open demo data there. And that brings us to the end of this Fast Start Get Ready session. So hopefully you now have all the information that you need to get Sage 50 Cloud accounts up and running to help you with the day-to-day administration of your business. When it comes to further processing, we have Fast Start 2 Get Going available. The agenda for that is on screen now. And firstly, you can see we've got invoice printing and emailing. So we looked at batch invoicing, creating those transactions on this session. On Fast Start 2, we look at creating printable or emailable invoices to send out to your customers, and then how you can receive payments and make payments. So you're raising your customer invoices and receiving supplier invoices, how you can show payments against those. And then should you need to, looking at chasing payments. So if customers aren't paying on time, the tools within Sage 50 Cloud accounts to help you chase those debts. We go a little bit more in depth in terms of the management report. So we'll have a look at the trial balance, the profit and loss, the balance sheet, and some aged reports. Then look at bank management, so how to create a new bank account and also reconcile transactions against your physical bank statement. And then have a look at the Sage Report Designer, which is a built-in system within Sage 50 Cloud accounts, allowing you to edit reports and layouts. And lastly, looking at the VAT return. And we look at that just to say that because you're already adding tax codes onto every transaction as you're processing, the VAT return in Sage 50 Cloud accounts is very simple and will calculate for you. So you specify your date range and it will build your VAT return for you. So we'll have a little look at that. Following this session, further support and training is available. From within your software, using the F1 key will open up help files relating to the screen that you currently have open, and using Help and Help Center will take you to our online resource where you can search by subject matter and the engine will return any relevant articles based on the search criteria. And for further training, we have three options. Our on-site training, which is instructor-led by one of our Sage experts at your premises and can be one-to-one or one-to-many and can be on any subject that you wish. We also offer remote one-to-one consultancy, which is 1 or 2 hours with a Sage expert, personal to you, so we'll call you on the phone, connect to your machine, and not only tell you how to do something, but show you within your data. And lastly, we have our Sage e-learning, which is online digital training that is available to you to learn at your own pace. It's available for 18 months to revisit as you need and contains things such as step-by-step guides, hands-on interactive training and FAQs, and using the code FASTSTART10 you can get 10% discount on any e-learning package. We've got some customer quotes there and also the telephone number for our training admin team who will be more than happy to help you with any queries. I hope you found this session useful and I hope to speak to you all again on Fast Start 2 Get Going. Enjoy getting to know Sage 50 Cloud accounts and thanks for your time and bye bye for now.